5 leather-clad bikers surrounded Steven Seagal outside a small diner. The leader cracked his knuckles and said, "Old man, you just parked in the wrong spot." But what they didn't know was, this wasn't just any man, and in the next 60 seconds, all 5 of them would be on the ground begging for mercy. What happened next became the most talked-about incident in that town's history. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon on Route 47, just outside Bakersfield. The kind of day where the sun hangs low, the road stretches forever, and trouble finds you when you least expect it. Steven Seagal had been driving for hours. No entourage, no cameras, no noise. Just him, his thoughts, and a vintage motorcycle he'd been restoring for months. He pulled into the gravel parking lot of Rosie's Diner, a small roadside cafe known for its homemade pies and strong coffee. The place was almost empty. A few truckers inside, an elderly couple by the window, and a waitress wiping down tables. Steven parked his bike near the entrance, removed his helmet, and stretched. His back ached. His shoulders were tight. He just wanted a quiet meal. But as he turned toward the door, he heard the rumble. Low, deep, aggressive. 5 motorcycles roared into the lot, kicking up dust and gravel. They circled him like wolves around prey. The engines cut off one by one, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. The leader, a man with a scarred face, tattooed neck, and a vest covered in patches, stepped forward. His boots crunched on the gravel, his eyes locked onto Steven. "You lost, old man?" Steven didn't respond. He just looked at him, calm, still, unbothered. The biker grinned and looked back at his crew. "I think Grandpa here don't speak English." The others laughed, cruel, mocking laughter that echoed across the empty lot. One of them kicked Steven's bike tire. "Nice ride. Bet you stole it from a museum." Another stepped closer, wild eyes gleaming. "Hey, boomer, this is our spot. You want to park here, you gotta pay a fee." Steven finally spoke, his voice low, steady, almost bored. "I'm just here for coffee." The leader laughed louder. "Nah, man, you're here to learn some manners." He shoved Steven's shoulder, not hard, but enough to test him. Steven didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. And that made the biker angry. Inside the diner, the waitress, a woman in her 50s named Donna, glanced out the window. She saw the bikers circling Steven, and her stomach dropped. Oh no, not again. The cook, a heavyset man named Earl, wiped his hands on his apron and came to the window. "Those guys? Yeah, they've been coming here for weeks, scaring customers, breaking things. Last week they made a family leave without paying because they were too scared. Did you call the cops? Twice. They show up an hour later and the bikers are already gone." Earl shook his head. That poor guy out there, he has no idea what he just walked into. Donna grabbed her phone, hands shaking, ready to dial 911, but something stopped her. The man outside, the one surrounded by 5 angry bikers, didn't look scared. He looked patient, like he was waiting for something. Outside, the tension thickened. The leader stepped even closer, now inches from Steven's face. His breath reeked of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. "You think you're tough, huh? You think you're some kind of hero?" Steven tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I think you're making a mistake." The biker's jaw clenched, his fists tightened until his knuckles turned white. "The only mistake here is you." He grabbed Steven by the collar and yanked him forward with force. Big mistake. In one fluid motion so fast the others barely saw it, Steven twisted his wrist, broke the grip, and swept the leader's legs out from under him. The man hit the ground hard, gasping for air, eyes wide with shock. The other 4 froze. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. The only sound was the leader wheezing on the gravel. Then the shorter biker with the shaved head lunged forward, fists swinging wildly. "You're dead!" Steven sidestepped like a ghost, redirected the punch with minimal effort, and used the man's own momentum to send him crashing into a parked truck.
The sound of metal denting echoed across the lot like a gunshot. A massive dent appeared in the truck's door. The bikers slumped to the ground, groaning. Now the remaining three hesitated. They looked at each other, then at their friends on the ground, then back at Stephen. Uncertainty flickered in their eyes. The youngest one, with a patchy beard, pulled a chain from his belt, trying to look brave. "You got lucky, old man, but your luck just ran out." He swung the chain hard, aiming for Stephen's head with all his strength. Stephen ducked smoothly, caught the chain mid-swing with one hand, yanked it forward, and drove his elbow into the kid's chest. The impact knocked the wind out of him completely. The kid crumpled like paper, clutching his ribs desperately for air. Two left. They stood side by side, backing up slowly, their bravado completely shattered. One of them, tall and lanky with nervous eyes, stammered, Who the hell are you?" Stephen straightened his jacket calmly, brushed the dust off his shoulder, and said in that same steady voice, "Someone who just wanted coffee." Inside the diner, Donna's hand covered her mouth in disbelief. Earl stood frozen beside her, eyes wider than dinner plates. Did he just take down 3 guys in under 10 seconds? Donna nodded slowly, unable to look away from the window. "I think we just met a legend." The elderly couple at their table had stopped eating entirely, forks suspended midair. One of the truckers whispered to his buddy, Is that Steven Seagal?" "No way. Can't be." "I'm telling you, man, I've seen his movies. That's him." Outside, the 2 remaining bikers were now backing toward their motorcycles, but the leader, still on the ground, his pride shattered into 1,000 pieces, yelled out, "Don't you dare run! Get him! Get him now!" And that's when things went from bad to absolutely unforgettable.
Comment below, do you think Stephen can handle the last 2? And type legend if you believe real strength doesn't need to be loud. Let's see who's still watching. The 2 remaining bikers, one tall and lanky, the other stocky with a thick beard, exchanged nervous glances. They didn't want to fight, but their pride wouldn't let them walk away. The bearded one reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. The blade glinted in the afternoon sun. "You're dead, old man." Stephen didn't move. He didn't even look at the knife. He looked the man straight in the eyes and said calmly, "Put it away. You don't want to do this." The bearded biker hesitated. His hand trembled slightly. But the tall one behind him shouted, "Don't listen to him. He's just one guy. We can take him." That was all the push he needed. He lunged forward, blade aimed directly at Stephen's ribs. What happened next was almost too fast to process. Stephen sidestepped at the last possible second, grabbed the man's wrist mid-thrust, and twisted it sharply in one precise motion. The blade clattered to the ground. Before the biker could even register the pain, Stephen delivered a controlled strike to his shoulder. The man's eyes rolled back, and he dropped like a bed of stones. Now it was one-on-one. The tall biker's confidence shattered completely. He backed up, hands raised defensively. Okay, we're done. We're leaving, I swear." But before he could turn and run, the leader, still on the ground, clutching his ribs, his ego more bruised than his body, yelled desperately, "Don't you dare run! Get him! Finish this!" The tall biker's face twisted with a mix of fear and rage. He had no choice now. His reputation was on the line. He charged with everything he had, arms outstretched, trying to tackle Stephen to the ground. Stephen didn't dodge this time. He stepped into the attack, absorbed the momentum like water flowing around a rock, and used a perfectly timed hip throw to send the man flipping through the air. The biker's body rotated a full 180 degrees before slamming hard onto his back. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. He lay there gasping, staring up at the sky, unable to move. Silence. Complete, heavy silence. All 5 bikers were on the ground, some groaning in pain, some unconscious, all utterly humiliated. Stephen stood in the center of the parking lot, breathing steady, not a single scratch on him, not even a drop of sweat. He looked down at the leader, who was clutching his ribs, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. You're some kind of professional fighter?"
Stephen crouched down slowly, meeting the man's eyes, his voice calm but firm. "I'm someone who's lived long enough to know that respect isn't taken by force. It's earned through character." The leader swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Who are you?" Stephen stood up, dusted off his hands with deliberate care, and said nothing. He simply turned and walked toward the diner entrance. The gravel crunched beneath his boots, the only sound in the entire parking lot. Inside, Donna and Earl stood frozen by the door, hands pressed against the glass. When Stephen walked in, they didn't know whether to clap, cheer, or run for cover. He smiled gently at them. "Still serving coffee?" Donna blinked several times, then laughed nervously, almost hysterically. "Yes, sir, on the house. Definitely on the house." Earl extended his hand, still trembling slightly. "Mr. I don't know who you are, but thank you. Those guys have been terrorizing this place for weeks. You just did what the police couldn't." Stephen shook his hand firmly. "They won't be back." And just like that, he sat down at the counter, ordered black coffee and a slice of apple pie, and acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just taken down 5 armed men in under 2 minutes. Outside, the bikers slowly struggled to their feet, limping, bruised, egos shattered beyond repair. One of them, the youngest, muttered through split lips, "We just got destroyed by a senior citizen." The leader spat blood onto the gravel and said quietly, "That wasn't a senior citizen. That was a warrior." But the story doesn't end here, because 20 minutes later, someone walked into that diner who would change everything.
Stephen was halfway through his pie when the door swung open with force. A young woman in a sheriff's uniform stepped inside, hand resting on her holstered gun. Her eyes swept the diner with trained precision before landing on Stephen. "You him?" Stephen looked up calmly, wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Depends who's asking." The sheriff, name tag read Deputy Rachel Ortiz, walked over with confident strides and sat across from him without invitation. "Got a call about a fight in the parking lot. 5 men down. Multiple witnesses say one man did it, alone." Stephen took a slow sip of coffee. "Self-defense." Rachel studied him carefully, her cop instincts on high alert. "You don't look like someone who just fought 5 guys. Maybe they weren't very good." She almost smiled. Almost. There was something about this man, his calm demeanor, the way he carried himself, that told her there was more to the story. "I ran your plates while driving over. Registered to a Steven Seagal, actor, martial artist, 7th degree black belt in Aikido." Stephen set his cup down gently. "Retired. Doesn't look like it to me." Rachel leaned back, arms crossed, sizing him up. "Those bikers outside, they've been causing trouble for months. Assault, theft, intimidation, destruction of property. We've been trying to catch them in the act for weeks." "Well, now you have them." Rachel nodded slowly, a hint of respect in her eyes. "You just did in 5 minutes what we couldn't do in 5 months." Stephen met her gaze directly. "I didn't come here to be a hero, Deputy. I came here for pie." Rachel chuckled despite herself. "Best pie in the state, they say." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Stephen took another bite. Rachel drummed her fingers on the table. Then her radio crackled to life with urgent static. "Dispatch to Deputy Ortiz. We've got a situation developing. The bikers you called in, their crew just showed up. About 15 of them. They're heading toward Rosie's Diner right now. ETA 3 minutes. Over." Rachel's face went pale. The color drained completely from her cheeks. Stephen didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He simply finished his last bite of pie, pushed the plate aside, and stood up calmly. "Guess I'm not done yet." Donna, overhearing everything from behind the counter, rushed over and grabbed his arm desperately. "Please, don't go out there. There's too many of them. You'll get yourself killed." Stephen looked at her kindly, placed his hand over hers. "That's exactly why I have to."
He walked toward the door with steady, measured steps. Rachel jumped up and followed. "You can't seriously take on 15 guys. That's suicide." Stephen paused at the threshold, hand on the door handle. He looked back over his shoulder with the faintest hint of a smile. "Watch me." The rumble started faint, but grew louder with each passing second. Low, deep, menacing, like distant thunder rolling across the desert. Earl moved to the window, his face tight with worry. "Oh, God, here they come." Through the dusty haze on the horizon, 15 motorcycles appeared. Their engines roared like angry beasts. They moved as one unit, a pack, a gang, a brotherhood, and they were coming for blood. Donna clutched her apron, tears forming in her eyes. "He's going to die out there." But the elderly man sitting at the corner table, who had been silent this entire time, spoke up quietly. "No, ma'am, I don't think he will." Everyone turned to look at him. He stood up slowly, pulled out his wallet, and placed a $20 bill on the table. "I was in Vietnam, saw a lot of soldiers, a lot of fighters, and I can tell you one thing." He gestured toward Stephen through the window. "That man out there, he's not afraid, and when a man has no fear, he's already won." Outside, the 15 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot in a roaring semicircle. Dust clouds erupted around them. Stephen stood alone in the center, hands relaxed at his sides, waiting.
Drop a comment if you think Stephen can handle 15 bikers, and type unstoppable if you believe one calm warrior can defeat an entire gang. Let's see who has faith. The rumble became deafening as 15 motorcycles formed a perfect circle around Stephen. Engines revved in unison, a coordinated display of intimidation. Then, one by one, they cut their engines. The silence that followed was suffocating. The new leader, a massive man, easily 6'5", dismounted slowly. He had a scar running down the left side of his face, arms covered in prison tattoos, and a vest that read Road King's MC, President. His fists looked like cinder blocks. He stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel, each step deliberate and threatening. "You the one who touched my boys?" Stephen stood perfectly still, hands relaxed at his sides. "They touched me first." The giant grinned, a cold, humorless expression. "Funny guy. I like that. Makes what comes next more enjoyable." He cracked his knuckles, and the sound echoed like breaking bones. "Name's Viper, and you just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life, old man." Rachel rushed out of the diner, badge held high. "Back off! This is official police business. I'm ordering you all to stand down." Viper turned his head slowly, looking at her like she was an annoying insect. "Little lady, you got about 10 seconds to get back in that diner before this gets real ugly. This doesn't concern you." Rachel's hand moved to her gun. "I said back off." But Stephen gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch calm and reassuring. "Let me handle this." "Are you insane? There's 15 of them." Stephen smiled faintly. "I've faced worse odds." He stepped forward, alone, directly into the center of the circle. The bikers spread out wider, surrounding him completely. No escape routes, no backup, no way out. Viper rolled his massive shoulders and cracked his neck. "Last chance, old man. Walk away while you still can." Stephen tilted his head slightly. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Viper's grin faded, replaced by cold rage. "Your funeral." He charged, a freight train of muscle and violence. Stephen waited until the absolute last second, then sidestepped with minimal movement. Viper stumbled forward off balance, and Stephen drove a precise strike into his kidney. The giant roared in pain and rage. 2 more bikers rushed in from opposite sides simultaneously. Stephen spun smoothly, deflected one punch, redirected another, and used their combined momentum to slam them into each other. They dropped instantly. Now the rest charged, all 12 at once, a wave of leather, fists, and fury.
And this is where everything changed. Just as the swarm closed in, 3 black SUVs screeched into the parking lot with military precision. Tires screamed, dust exploded. Doors flew open before the vehicles even stopped moving. Out stepped 6 men in tactical gear, black vests, no badges visible, moving with the coordination of trained operators. And leading them was a man in his 50s wearing a dark suit, sunglasses, and the bearing of someone who'd commanded soldiers in war zones. He walked straight towards Stephen, completely ignoring the bikers as if they didn't exist. "Mr. Seagal, we've been looking for you." Stephen didn't break his defensive stance. "Took you long enough, Marcus." The bikers froze mid-charge, confused and suddenly uncertain. Viper squinted, his confidence wavering. "Who the hell are you people?" Marcus turned him slowly, removing his sunglasses. His eyes were cold, dead calm. "Someone you really don't want to meet." He pulled out a badge, but not a local sheriff's badge. FBI. The 3 letters seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. "This man," Marcus said, gesturing toward Stephen, "is under federal protection. He's been working with us on an undercover operation for the last 6 months." The bikers' faces drained of all color. Blood rushed from their cheeks. Viper's voice cracked, all his bravado gone. What operation?" Marcus smiled thinly, like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Human trafficking, illegal arms distribution, drug smuggling across state lines. Your club's been under federal investigation for 2 years." He paused for dramatic effect. "And thanks to Mr. Seagal here, we finally have enough evidence to shut down your entire organization." Stephen glanced at Marcus with the slightest smirk. "You're welcome."
The parking lot erupted into absolute chaos. Bikers scattered in every direction like startled rats. Some ran for their motorcycles, others bolted toward the road on foot. But the FBI agents moved with surgical precision. Within seconds, they had blocked every exit route. "Nobody moves. FBI, get on the ground now." Tactical agents emerged from the SUVs with rifles, forming a perimeter. The bikers had nowhere to go. One by one, they dropped to their knees, hands behind their heads. Viper, the massive leader, stood frozen in disbelief. His empire, his brotherhood, was crumbling before his eyes. Marcus walked up to him slowly, handcuffs gleaming in the sun. "You have the right to remain silent." "Wait! Wait!" Viper's voice cracked with desperation. "We can make a deal. I can give you names, locations, everything." Marcus smiled coldly. "We already have everything, thanks to him." He nodded toward Stephen, who stood calmly watching the entire operation unfold. Viper turned to Stephen, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. You set us up? This whole thing was a trap?" Stephen stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. "I gave your boys a chance to walk away. They chose violence. You came here looking for a fight." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I just made sure it was your last one." Viper dropped to his knees, the fight completely drained from his body. An agent pulled his arms back and cuffed him. "Vincent Viper Malone, you're under arrest for racketeering, human trafficking, drug distribution, and conspiracy to commit murder." Within minutes, all 15 bikers were in cuffs, being loaded into transport vehicles. The parking lot that had been filled with threats and violence was now filled with flashing lights and federal agents. Rachel stood off to the side, still processing everything she'd just witnessed. Marcus approached her, extending his hand. "Deputy Ortiz, Marcus Chen, FBI Special Agent. Sorry we couldn't brief local law enforcement, but this operation required absolute secrecy." Rachel shook his hand, still dazed. "So this was all planned?" "Not exactly. Mr. Seagal really did just stop for coffee, but when those bikers showed up, he recognized several members from our surveillance photos. He texted me, and we moved in." Rachel looked over at Stephen, who was now leaning against his motorcycle, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't just taken down 5 men and helped capture an entire criminal organization. "He's something else." Marcus chuckled. "That's one way to put it." An hour later, the parking lot was finally clear. The bikers were gone, the FBI had packed up, the circus had left town.
Stephen walked back into the diner. Donna practically ran to him, eyes red from crying. I don't even know what to say." "Say nothing. Just pour me one more cup of coffee." Earl emerged from the kitchen, a massive grin on his weathered face. "Mr. Seagal, that meal is on the house, forever. You come here anytime. You eat free. I mean it." Stephen smiled genuinely. "I appreciate that, Earl, but I always pay my way." He pulled out his wallet and left a $100 bill on the counter. "For the coffee and the pie. Best I've had in years." Donna picked up the bill with trembling hands. "This is too much." "It's exactly right." Rachel entered the diner one last time, her shift apparently over. She sat down next to Stephen at the counter. "So you really were just here for coffee and pie?" "I was. Everything else was just unfortunate timing." She shook her head, a smile playing at her lips. "You're one hell of a man, Steven Seagal. I'm just someone who believes in doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient." He finished his coffee, stood up, and placed his helmet under his arm. As he walked toward the door, Donna called out, "Will we ever see you again?" Stephen paused, turned back, and smiled gently. "Maybe, if the pie is still this good." And with that, he walked out, mounted his motorcycle, started the engine, and rode off into the golden sunset. No fanfare, no applause, no cameras. Just a quiet man who did what needed to be done.
Inside the diner, silence hung in the air for a long moment. Earl turned to Donna, wiping his hands on his apron. "Did that really just happen?" Donna laughed, a release of tension, relief, and pure disbelief. "I don't know, but I'm never forgetting it." The elderly Vietnam veteran who had spoken earlier stood up slowly and walked to the counter. He placed another 20 down. "That man out there, he reminded me of something I learned a long time ago." "What's that?" Rachel asked. "That real warriors don't look for fights, but when fights find them, they end them." He tipped his hat and walked out. Rachel sat at the counter, staring at her coffee cup, replaying everything in her mind. "You know what gets me?" she said to no one in particular. "He never raised his voice, not once. Not when they threatened him, not when they attacked him, not even when 15 more showed up." Donna nodded. "My husband was like that. Quiet strength, he called it. Said the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest." Earl added, "My grandfather used to say, 'Empty barrels make the most noise.'" Rachel smiled. "Steven Seagal is no empty barrel." Outside, a couple who had watched everything from their car finally got the courage to come inside. "Is it safe now?" the woman asked nervously. "Safest it's been in months," Earl said warmly. "Come on in. Coffee's hot, pie's fresh." As they sat down, the man whispered to his wife, "Did you see that guy? Took down 5 men like it was nothing." "I recorded some of it," she whispered back. "This is going to go viral." And she was right. By that evening, shaky cell phone footage had spread across social media. Hashtag Steven Seagal Diner started trending. News outlets picked up the story. Action star stops real crime in real life. Steven Seagal helps FBI bust biker gang. Hollywood legend proves he's still got it. But Steven never commented. He didn't post about it, didn't give interviews, didn't seek attention. He simply continued his ride, disappearing into the mountains, far from cameras and crowds, because that's who he was. A man who didn't need validation, a man who didn't need applause, a man who understood that true power doesn't announce itself, it simply exists. Back at the diner, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and purple, Donna taped a handwritten sign to the front door. "In honor of the man who stood up when no one else would, today's pie is free for anyone who shows kindness to a stranger." Underneath, customers began leaving notes. "Respect is earned, not demanded. Stay humble, stay strong. Never judge a book by its cover." Within days, Rosie's Diner became a local landmark. People drove from neighboring towns just to sit where Stephen had sat, to hear Earl and Donna tell the story firsthand. The booth where he ate became known as the Legends Seat. And on the wall, Donna framed the $100 bill he'd left, with a small plaque beneath it. "Steven Seagal,
a quiet hero who reminded us what true strength looks like. The lesson. True strength isn't about how loud you are. It's about how calm you remain when the world tries to break you. Steven Seagal walked into a diner for coffee and pie. He left behind a lesson that town would never forget. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. Power isn't proven through violence, it's proven through restraint. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. The bikers thought they were intimidating an old man. They didn't realize they were challenging a legend. More incredible stories like this are coming your way soon. Stories of humble warriors, quiet heroes, people who choose kindness over cruelty and strength over ego. Let me know in the comments, which part did you enjoy most? The fight scenes, the FBI twist, or the calm way Steven handled everything? Your feedback helps us create even better content for you. Until next time, stay strong, stay humble, and never underestimate the quiet ones.
Type legend if this story inspired you, and tell us where you're watching from. We love connecting with warriors from around the world.